Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Thank you once again for joining another episode of One Track Record. I am your host, Shayna, and we are here to continue our part two of the story of the Little Prince. Hopefully, everybody is having a great day. I know I am, despite me frantically looking for my book for over 2 hours. Everything is okay. This week was a doozy, but I'm here with my Trackstar family. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't already, subscribe and make sure you hit all notifications so that way you are constantly updated, whether it is content, bonus content, or me just communicating with you on the community feed. Now, y'all, this week was ghetto. Boy, was this week ghetto. Not only did it just have me look for this book for 2+ hours, but I'm in Long Island, and thank God my house didn't flood. But the Wi-Fi this week, okay, whew, that's all I'm gonna say. But by the grace of God, everything is up and running, and I am able to deliver part two with no delays. Okay? Gotta thank God for small victories. Now, if you are listening to this right now and you haven't already listened to part one, you will be confused, okay? Because part one last week, we had started off this story really written by and narrated by the pilot, okay? So, for those of you who just may need a quick refresher, we have a pilot that is stranded in the Sahara Desert with only enough drinking water for 8 days, so keep that in mind. He then meets the little prince who speaks about how he came from another planet, which I'm pretty sure at that time he wasn't sure if he was dehydrated and seeing a mirage or if this little prince was possibly on acid and didn't know what he was talking about, which I don't recommend. Okay? I'm not here to push drugs. I'm here to push the gospel in a way that is socially accepted. Okay? I'm not here to force anything. If you don't like JC, I don't know what to tell you. But soon the pilot learns about all the trouble he has gone through before making it to planet Earth, which includes ending his relationship with a rose he met on his planet. Okay? That rose is toxic. And before I get into anything else, I had asked you guys in the community feed what you guys may think the baobabs from the Little Prince's planet, what they may represent or symbolize, the rose on his planet, and a few other things. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, or you know how to reach me on Instagram. You already know. But ultimately, the little prince had just finished explaining in part one his encounter with a monarch from another planet. And now, in here, this episode, part two, he's about to recount the other peculiar adults that he came across. Okay, so today's episode, we're going to start with the second planet that he visits, who he visits, the conversations he has with the other planets before making it to planet Earth, where the pilot is. And of course, I gotta give some kudos to those who have provided today's lovely illustrations that I'll be using. So far, I've heard many many compliments on the illustrations. Listen, I didn't create any of them, but I'm trying to multitask while telling the story. And baby, it is a hard job as well as multitasking with the voices, but you guys make it so worthwhile. That's why I keep doing it. Also, special shout outs to Natalie. Thank you for your donation. I really almost cried because you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that, but you did. And it's appreciation, whether it be monetarily by hitting the like button, or my personal favorite, when you guys leave comments. That is what keeps the channel going. And I thank you very much for your engagement, for your support. When you share the content, I appreciate that. I really do. And I say it every episode. You guys are my Trackstar family, and you are appreciated. No matter how much you think something as far as hitting the like button or commenting, you may think it's small, it's big to me. And your time is not to be wasted. So I'm here to only put out thought-provoking, deep conversations with my family. I only talk to my family like this, okay? You guys are my extended family. You guys are awesome. Now, today's illustrations are provided by the original publishing by the late and great Antoine de Saint-Exupery. We also have, of course, PALITRA Publishing. We also have some illustrations that are provided by the 2015 version that became a movie, notoriously on Netflix, or it may not be on Netflix. I'm not sure. I haven't checked as of lately, but it was directed by Mark Osborne, so shout outs to him, as well as the art collection and exhibition by none other than Arnaud Nazau-Aga. Super amazing. I wish I could check out that art exhibit because it gives the book justice, okay? And last but certainly not least, thank you, Gordon Bruce, for your contribution to today's illustrations as well. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this book. Okay? So again, we have left off in part 1 where the little prince had just left the planet with the monarch and is now heading to planet number 2. The second planet was inhabited by a very vain man. "Ah, a visit from an admirer," he exclaimed when he caught sight of the little prince, still at some distance. To vain men, other people are admirers. "Hello," said the little prince. "That's a funny hat you're wearing." "It's for answering acclamations," the very vain man replied. "Unfortunately, no one ever comes this way." "Is that so?" said the little prince, who did not understand what the vain man was talking about. "Clap your hands," directed the man. The little prince clapped his hands, and the vain man tipped his hat in modest acknowledgment. "This is more entertaining than the visit to the king," the little prince said, and he continued clapping. The very vain man continued tipping his hat in acknowledgment. After 5 minutes of this exercise, the little prince tired of the game's monotony. "And what would make the hat fall off?" he asked. But the vain man did not hear him. Vain men never hear anything but praise. "Do you really admire me a great deal?" he asked the little prince.
What does that mean, admire?
To admire means to acknowledge that I am the handsomest, the best dressed, the richest, and the most intelligent man on the planet.
But you're the only man on your planet.
Do me this favor, admire me all the same.
I admire you?
Said the little prince, with a little shrug of his shoulders. But what is there about my admiration that interests you so much? And the little prince went on his way.
Grown-ups are certainly very strange,
he said to himself as he continued. The next planet was inhabited by a drunkard. This visit was a very brief one.
What are you doing there?
He asked the drunkard, whom he found sunk in silence before a collection of empty bottles and a collection of full ones. Drinking, replied the drunkard with a gloomy expression.
Why are you drinking?
The little prince asked. To forget, replied the drunkard.
To forget what?
Inquired the little prince, who was already feeling sorry for him. To forget that I'm ashamed, confessed the drunkard, hanging his head.
What are you ashamed of?
Inquired the little prince, who wanted to help. Of drinking, concluded the drunkard, withdrawing into silence for good. And the little prince went on his way, puzzled.
Grown-ups are certainly very, very strange, he said to himself
as he continued on his journey. The fourth planet belonged to a businessman. This person was so busy that he didn't even raise his head when the little prince arrived.
Hello, said the little prince. Your cigarette's gone out.
3 and 2 make 5. 5 and 7, 12. 12 and 3, 15. Hello. 15 and 7, 22. 22 and 6, 28. No time to light it again. 26 and 5, 31. Phew. That amounts to 501,622,731.
500 million what?
You're still there. 501 million. I don't remember. I have so much work to do. I'm a serious man. I can't be bothered with trifles. 2 and 5, 7.
501 million what?
Repeated the little prince, who had never in his life let go of a question once he asked it. The businessman raised his head. For the 54 years I've inhabited this planet, I've been interrupted only 3 times. The first time was 22 years ago, when I was interrupted by a beetle that had fallen onto my desk from God knows where. It made a terrible noise, and I made 4 mistakes in my calculations. The second time was 11 years ago, when I was interrupted by a fit of rheumatism. I don't get enough exercise. I haven't taken time for strolls. I'm a serious person. The third time is right now. Where was I? 501 million.
Million what?
The businessman realized that he had no hope of being left in peace. Oh, of those little things you sometimes see in the sky.
Flies?
No, the little shiny things.
Bees?
No, those little golden things that make lazy people daydream. Now, I'm a serious person. I have no time for daydreaming.
Ah, you mean stars.
Yes, that's it, stars.
And what do you do with 500 million stars?
501,622,731. I'm a serious person and I'm accurate.
And what do you do with those stars?
What do I do with them?
Yes.
Nothing. I own them.
You own the stars?
Yes.
But I've already seen a king who...
Kings don't own. They reign over. It's quite different.
And what good does owning the stars do you?
It does me the good of being rich.
And what good does it do you to be rich?
It lets me buy other stars if somebody discovers them. The little prince said to himself,
This man argues a lot like the little drunkard.
Nevertheless, he asked more questions.
How can someone own the stars?
To whom do they belong? Retorted the businessman grumpily.
I don't know, to nobody?
Then they belong to me because I thought of it first.
That's all it takes?
Of course, when you find a diamond that belongs to nobody in particular, then it's yours. When you find an island that belongs to nobody in particular, it's yours. When you're the first person to have an idea, you patent it and it's yours. Now I own the stars since no one before me ever thought of owning them.
That's true enough, the little prince said. And what do you do with them?
I manage them. I count them and then count them again, the businessman said. It's difficult work, but I'm a serious person. The little prince was still not satisfied.
If I own a scarf, I can tie it around my neck and take it away. If I own a flower, I can pick it and take it away. But you can't pick the stars.
No, but I can put them in the bank.
What does that mean?
That means that I write the number of my stars on a slip of paper, and then I lock that slip of paper in a drawer.
And that's all?
That's enough.
That's amusing, thought the little prince, and even poetic, but not very serious.
The little prince had very different ideas about serious things from those of the grown-ups.
I own a flower, he continued, which I water every day. I own 3 volcanoes, which I rake out every week. I even rake out the extinct one. You never know. It's of some use to my volcanoes, and it's useful to my flower that I own them, but you're not useful to the stars.
The businessman opened his mouth but found nothing to say in reply, and the little prince went on his way.
Grown-ups are certainly quite extraordinary,
was all he said to himself as he continued on his journey. The 5th planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all of them. There was just enough room for a street lamp and a lamplighter. The little prince couldn't quite understand what use a street lamp and a lamplighter could be up there in the sky on a planet without any people and not a single house. However, he said to himself,
it's quite possible that this man is absurd, but he's less absurd than the king, the very vain man, the businessman, and the drunkard. At least his work has some meaning. When he lights his lamp, it's as if he's bringing more than one star to life or more than one flower. When he puts out his lamp, that sends the flower or the star to sleep, which is a fine occupation and therefore truly useful.
When the little prince reached this planet, he greeted the lamplighter respectfully.
Good morning. Why have you just put out your lamp?
Orders, the lamplighter answered. Good morning.
What orders are those?
To put out my street lamp. Good evening. And he lit his lamp again.
But why have you just lit your lamp again?
Orders.
I don't understand, said the little prince.
There's nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. Then he wiped his forehead with a red checkered handkerchief. It's a terrible job I have. I used to be a reasonable job. I put the lamp out mornings and lit it after dark. I had the rest of the day for my own affairs and the rest of the night for sleeping.
And since then, orders have changed?
Orders haven't changed, the lamplighter said. That's just the trouble. Year by year, the planet is turning faster and faster, and orders haven't changed.
Which means?
Which means that now the planet revolves once a minute. I don't have an instant's rest. I light my lamp and turn it out once every minute.
That's funny. Your days here are 1 minute long.
It's not funny at all, the lamplighter said. You and I have already been talking to each other for a month.
A month?
Yes, 30 minutes, 30 days. Good evening. And he lit his lamp. The little prince watched him, growing fonder and fonder of this lamplighter, who was so faithful to orders. He remembered certain sunsets that he himself used to follow in other days, merely by shifting his chair. He wanted to help his friend.
You know, I can show you a way to take a rest whenever you want to.
I always want to rest, the lamplighter said, for it is possible to be faithful and lazy at the same time. The little prince continued,
Your planet is so small that you can walk around it in 3 strides. All you have to do is walk more slowly, and you'll always be in the sun. When you want to take a rest, just walk, and the day will last as long as you want it to.
What good does that do to me? The lamplighter said, when the one thing in life I want to do is sleep.
Then you're out of luck,
said the little prince. I am, said the lamplighter. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. Now, that man, the little prince said to himself, as he continued on his journey,
that man would be despised by all the others, by the king, by the very vain man, by the drunkard, by the businessman, yet he's the only one who doesn't strike me as ridiculous. Perhaps it's because he's thinking of something besides himself.
He heaved a sigh of regret and said to himself again,
that man is the only one I might have made my friend, but his planet is really too small. There's not room for two.
What the little prince had dared not admit was that he most regretted leaving that planet because it was blessed with 1,440 sunsets every 24 hours. The sixth planet was 10 times bigger than the last. It was inhabited by an old gentleman who wrote enormous books. Ah, here comes an explorer, he exclaimed when he caught sight of the little prince, who was feeling a little winded and sat down on the huge desk. He had already traveled so much and so far. Where do you come from? The old gentleman asked him.
What's that big book? Asked the little prince. What do you do with it?
I'm a geographer, the old gentleman answered.
And what's a geographer?
A scholar who knows where the seas are and the rivers, the cities, the mountains, and the deserts.
That is very interesting, the little prince said. Here at last is someone who has a real profession.
And he gazed around him at the geographer's planet. He had never seen a planet so majestic.
Your planet is very beautiful, he said. Does it have any oceans?
I couldn't say, said the geographer.
Oh,
the little prince was very disappointed.
And mountains?
I couldn't say, said the geographer.
And cities? And rivers and deserts?
I couldn't tell you that either. The geographer said,
You're a geographer.
That's right, said the geographer, but I'm not an explorer. There's not one explorer on my planet. A geographer doesn't go out to describe cities, rivers, mountains, seas, oceans, deserts. A geographer is too important to go wandering about. He never leaves his study. But he receives the explorers there. He questions them, and he writes down what they remember. And if the memories of one of the explorers seems interesting to him, then the geographer conducts an inquiry into that explorer's moral character.
Why is that?
Because an explorer who told lies would cause disasters in the geography books, as would an explorer who drank too much.
Why is that?
The little prince asked again. Because drunkards see double, and the geographer would write down 2 mountains where there was only one.
I know someone who would be a bad explorer.
Possibly. Well, when the explorer's moral character seems to be a good one, an investigation is made into his discovery.
By going to see it?
No, that would be too complicated. But the explorer is required to furnish proofs. For instance, if he claims to have discovered a large mountain, he is required to bring back large stones from it. The geographer suddenly grew excited. But you come from far away. You're an explorer. You must describe your planet for me. And the geographer, having opened his logbook, sharpened his pencil. Explorers' reports are first recorded in pencil. Ink is used only after proofs have been furnished. Well?
Oh, where I live, said the little prince, is not very interesting. It's so small. I have 3 volcanoes, 2 active, and 1 extinct. But you never know.
You never know, said the geographer.
I also have a flower.
We don't record flowers, the geographer said.
Why not? It's the prettiest thing.
Because flowers are ephemeral.
What does ephemeral mean?
Geographies, said the geographer, are the finest books of all. They never go out of fashion. It is extremely rare for a mountain to change position. It is extremely rare for an ocean to be drained of its water. We write eternal things.
But extinct volcanoes can come back to life,
the little prince interrupted.
What does ephemeral mean?
Whether volcanoes are extinct or active comes down to the same thing for us. For us, what counts is the mountain. That doesn't change.
But what does ephemeral mean?
Repeated the little prince, who had never in all his life let go of a question once he asked it. It means which is threatened by imminent disappearance.
Is my flower threatened by imminent disappearance?
Of course.
My flower is ephemeral,
the little prince said to himself.
And she only has 4 thorns with which to defend herself against the world, and I've left her all alone where I live.
That was his first impulse of regret, but he plucked up his courage again.
Where would you advise me to visit? He asked.
The planet Earth, the geographer answered. It has a good reputation. And the little prince went on his way thinking about his flower. The 7th planet, then, was the Earth. The Earth is not just another planet. It contains 111 kings, including, of course, the African kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7.5 million drunkards, 311 million vain men, about 2 billion grown-ups. To give you a notion of the Earth's dimensions, I can tell you that before the invention of electricity, it was necessary to maintain over the whole of 6 continents a veritable army of 462,511 lamplighters. The movements of this army were ordered like those of a ballet. First came the turn of the lamplighters of New Zealand and Australia. Then these, having lit their street lamps, would go home to sleep. Next, it would be the turn of the lamplighters of China and Siberia to perform their steps in the lamplighters' ballet, and then they too would vanish into the wings. Then came the turn of the lamplighters of Russia and India, then those of Africa and Europe, then those of South America and of North America, and they never missed their cues for their appearances on stage. It was awe-inspiring. Only the lamplighter of the single street lamp at the North Pole and his colleague of the single street lamp at the South Pole led carefree, idle lives. They worked twice a year. Trying to be witty leads to lying, more or less. What I just told you about the lamplighters isn't completely true, and I risk giving a false idea of our planet to those who don't know it. Men occupy very little space on Earth, If the 2 billion inhabitants of the globe were to stand close together, they would easily fit into a city block that was 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. You could crowd all humanity onto the smallest Pacific islet. Grown-ups, of course, won't believe you. They're convinced they take up much more room. They consider themselves as important as the baobabs, so you should advise them to make their own calculations. They love numbers and they'll enjoy it. It's unnecessary, trust me. So once he reached Earth, the little prince was quite surprised not to see anyone. He was beginning to fear he had come to the wrong planet when a moon-colored loop uncoiled on the sand. "Good evening," the little prince said, just in case. "Good evening," said the snake. "What planet have I landed on?" asked the little prince. "On the planet Earth, in Africa," the snake replied. "Ah, and are there no people on Earth?" "It's the desert here. There are no people in the desert. Earth is very big," said the snake. The little prince sat down on a rock. "I wonder," he said, "if the stars are lit up so that each of us can find his own some day. Look at my planet. It's just overhead, but so far away." "It's lovely," the snake said. "What have you come to Earth for?" "I'm having difficulties with a flower," the little prince said. "Ah," said the snake, and they both went silent. "Where are the people?" The little prince finally resumed the conversation. "It's a little lonely in the desert." "It's so lonely with people," said the snake. The little prince looked at the snake for a very long time. "You're a funny creature," he said at last. "No thicker than a finger." "But I'm more powerful than a king's finger," the snake said. The little prince smiled. "You're not very powerful. You don't even have feet. You couldn't travel very far." "I can take you further than a ship," the snake said. He coiled around the little prince's ankle like a golden bracelet. "Anyone I touch, I send back to the land from which he came," the snake went on. "But you're innocent, and you come from a star." The little prince made no reply. "I feel sorry for you being so weak on this granite Earth. I can help you someday if you grow too homesick for your planet. I can—" "Oh, I understand just what you mean," said the little prince. "But why do you always speak in riddles?" "I solve them all," said the snake, and they were both silent. The little prince crossed the desert and encountered only one flower, a flower with 3 petals, a flower of no consequence. "Good morning," said the little prince. "Good morning," said the flower. "Where are the people?" the little prince inquired politely. The flower had one day seen a caravan passing. "People? There are 6 or 7 of them, I believe, in existence. I caught sight of them years ago, but you never know where to find them. The wind blows them away. They have no roots, which hampers them a good deal." "Goodbye," said the little prince. "Goodbye," said the flower. The little prince climbed a high mountain. The only mountains he had ever known were the 3 volcanoes which came to his knee, and he used the extinct volcano as a footstool. "From a mountain as high as this one," he said to himself, "I'll get a view of the whole planet and all the people on it." But he saw nothing but rocky peaks as sharp needles. "Hello, hello, hello, hello," the echo answered. "Who are you?" asked the little prince. "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" the echo answered.
Let's be friends. I'm lonely, he said. I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, the echo answered. What a peculiar planet, he thought. It's all dry and sharp and hard, and people here have no imagination. They repeat whatever you say to them. Where I live, I had a flower, and she always spoke first.
But it so happened that the little prince walked a long time through sand and rocks and snow, finally discovered a road, and all roads go to where there are people.
Good morning, he said.
It was a blossoming rose garden.
Good morning, said the roses.
The little prince gazed at them. All of them looked like his flower.
Who are you? He asked, astounded. We're roses, the roses said. Ah, said the little prince,
and he felt very unhappy. His flower had told him she was the only one of her kind in the whole universe, and here were 5,000 of them, all just alike, in just one garden.
She would be very annoyed, he said to himself. If she saw this, she would cough terribly and pretend to be dying to avoid being laughed at. And I'd have to pretend to be nursing her. Otherwise, she'd really let herself die in order to humiliate me.
And then he said to himself,
I thought I was rich because I had just one flower, and all I own is an ordinary rose. That and my 3 volcanoes, which come up to my knee, one of which may be permanently extinct. It doesn't make me much of a prince.
It was then that the fox appeared. Good morning, said the fox.
Good morning,
the little prince answered politely, though when he turned around he saw nothing. I'm here, the voice said, under the apple tree.
Who are you?
the little prince asked.
You're very pretty.
I'm a fox, the fox said.
Come and play with me, the little prince proposed. I'm feeling so sad.
I can't play with you, the fox said. I'm not tamed.
Ah, excuse me, said the little prince,
but upon reflection he added,
What does tamed mean?
You're not from around here, the fox said. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for people,
said the little prince.
What does tamed mean?
People, said the fox, have guns and they hunt. It's quite troublesome, and they also raise chickens. That's the only thing about them. Are you looking for chickens?
No, said the little prince. I'm looking for friends. What does tamed mean?
It's something that's been too often neglected. It means to create ties.
To create ties?
That's right, the fox said. For me, you're only a little boy just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you have no need of me either. For you, I'm only a fox, like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, we'll need each other. You'll be the only boy in the world for me, and I'll be the only fox in the world for you.
I'm beginning to understand, the little prince said. There's a flower. I think she's tamed me.
Possibly, the fox said.
Oh, this isn't on Earth, the little prince said.
The fox seemed quite intrigued. On another planet?
Yes.
Are there hunters on that planet?
No.
Now that's interesting. And chickens? Sighed the fox, but he returned to this idea. My life is monotonous. I hunt chickens, people hunt me, all chickens are just alike, and all men are just alike, so I'm rather bored. But if you tame me, my life will be filled with sunshine. I'll know the sound of footsteps that will be different from all the rest. Other footsteps send me back underground. Yours will call me out of my burrow like music. And then look, you see the wheat fields over there? I don't eat bread. For me, wheat is of no use, whatever. Wheat feels saying nothing to me, which is sad. But you have hair the color of gold, so it will be wonderful once you've tamed me. The wheat, which is golden, will remind me of you, and I'll love the sound of the wind in the wheat. The fox fell silent and stared at the little prince for a long while. Please, tame me, he said.
I'd like to, the little prince replied, but I haven't much time. I have friends to find and so many things to learn.
The only things you learn are the things you tame, said the fox. People haven't time to learn anything. They buy things ready made in stores. But since there are no stores where you can buy friends, people no longer have friends. If you want a friend, tame me.
What do I have to do?
Asked the little prince. You have to be very patient, the fox answered. First, you'll sit down a little ways away from me, over there in the grass. I'll watch you out of the corner of my eye, and you won't say anything. Language is the source of misunderstandings, but day by day, you'll be able to sit a little closer. The next day, the little prince returned. It would have been better to return at the same time, the fox said. For instance, if you come at 4 in the afternoon, I'll begin to be happy by 3. And then by 4, I'll be all excited and worried. I'll discover what it costs to be happy. But if you come at any old time, I'll never know when I should prepare my heart. There must be rites.
What's a rite?
Asked the little prince. That's another thing that's been too often neglected, said the fox. It's the fact that one day is different from the other days. 1 hour from the other hours. My hunters, for example, they dance with the village girls on Thursdays. So Thursday's a wonderful day. I can take a stroll all the way to the vineyards. If the hunters danced whenever they chose, the days would all be just alike, and I'd have no holiday at all. That was how the little prince tamed the fox. And when the time to leave was near, ah, the fox said, I shall weep.
It's your own fault, the little prince said. I never wanted to do you any harm, but you insisted that I tame you.
Yes, of course, the fox said.
But you're going to weep, said the little prince.
Yes, of course, the fox said.
Then you get nothing out of it.
I get something, the fox said, because of the color of the wheat. Then he added, Go look at the roses again. You'll understand that yours is the only rose in all the world. Then come back to say goodbye, and I'll make you the gift of a secret.
You're not at all like my rose. You're nothing at all, yet, he told them. No one has tamed you, and you haven't tamed anyone. You're the way my fox was. He was just a fox, like 100,000 others. But I've made him my friend, and now he's the only fox in all the world.
And the roses were humbled.
You're lovely, but you're empty, he went on. One couldn't die for you. Of course, an ordinary passerby would think my rose looked just like you, but my rose is more important than all of you together, since she's the one I've watered, since she's the one I put under glass, since she's the one I sheltered behind a screen, since she's the one for whom I killed the caterpillars, except the 2 or 3 for butterflies, since she's the one I listened to when she complained, or when she boasted, or even sometimes when she said nothing at all. She's my rose.
And he went back to the fox.
Goodbye,
he said, and here is my secret. It's quite simple. One sees clearly only with the heart. Anything essential is invisible to the eyes.
Anything essential is invisible to the eyes,
the little prince repeated. in order to remember. It's the time you spent on your rose that makes your rose so important.
It's the time I spent on my rose,
the little prince repeated, in order to remember. People have forgotten this truth, the fox said, but you mustn't forget. You become responsible forever for what you've tamed. You're responsible for your rose.
I'm responsible for my rose,
the little prince repeated, in order to remember. And this concludes part 2. So far, folks, let me know what you think. You know where to reach me. Reach me on Instagram. But I want to ask a couple things. I know before I asked, what did you guys think the rose meant? What did you think of the baobabs? After my reading in today's episode of part 2, does your opinion of what you think is symbolic of the rose, baobabs, or anything else, does it change for you at all? Does it remain consistent? What do you feel about the adults that were met through planets 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now Earth making 7? Do you feel like the fox has given the little prince insight on how to deal with this rose? Do you feel like it was sound advice? Do you feel like the snake even gave the little prince an opportunity of a lifetime to go back to his planet? Do you think he's the villain in this? Do you think he is a savior in this? Let me know what you guys think. I have so many thoughts. I am actually in the background reading this book again for now the 4th time. And like I said before in the community tab, every time I read this book, I get a new revelation. And I can't wait to share with you the things that I have, especially for those who understand the book, the manual, the script, about the story of the Christ figure. What I have for you folks is going to blow your mind. Okay, but I will be back hopefully as soon as possible with part 3 as we conclude this story, and I'm going to stir up quite the conversation. Breakdown of what I believe every little thing in this book represents, the significance, the symbolism, and where to find it in the Bible for reference. Okay? I wish I had done this 15 years ago when I first read this book. But like the little prince, like many of us throughout our lifetimes, we go to other planets or we go to other environments. We pick up on things. We're constantly learning. Like a child. Let me be clear. Yes, all of us, for the most part, are adults here, unless you're under 18, which is okay for you to be here for at this time, unless your parents say otherwise, because this is not for children, per se. But just like the little prince, each of us constantly is learning through the mind of a child, is constantly developing through trial and error, through rose and thorns, and snakes and foxes, all of these characters, right? Because we each have our own story and are traveling through this life with our own purpose. Think about your personal upbringing and think about the people who you may have come across. Maybe you identify with any of the men that the little prince found strange on these planets, right? And this is not to shame anybody. This is more so, again, a self-reflection, but through the mind of the inner child. How has your inner child been impacted? Do you feel like your inner child has never been impacted? Which I gotta say, folks, I feel like your inner child has not been impacted in the slightest. You're doing yourself a major disservice and you're lying to yourself. Because look at all this whole entire story so far is literally in the mind of innocence, absorbing all of life's troubles being thrown at them, being thrown at this child's mind. Things that they want to learn, things they don't want to learn, things that trigger sadness, things that trigger happiness, things that should trigger serious situations, learning to maneuver socially, spiritually, everything imaginable. And we haven't even finished this book yet. If you have not read this book before, and this is your first time even knowing about it, let me know in the comment section. If this is a book that you've already read, but you've never read it to this extent, or you haven't exactly been provoked to think this deep about how this would impact your own inner child, being that this book was really narrated by the pilot and Antoine de Saint-Exupery, his idea of his inner child, his drawings, his illustrations from the original book. All of these things where he went back into the mind of his inner child in order to create a book so profound. Think about these things. Yes, this is for education and entertainment, edutainment. But don't get swept up in the illustrations so that you lose the salt of this book. Okay? And why do I use the word salt? Because the book also explains that we are what? The salt of the earth, right? But what is the purpose of salt? Salt can either add flavor, but it can also cleanse. And to those whom we come across with wounds, some people who have not yet healed from their inner child, but you being the salt of the earth, as the Most High proclaimed you as, you might offend some people in the process of you healing your wounds with the help of the Most High, while others have not. That is the essence of why this book is so important, and this series, The Inner Child, is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Let me know what you're feeling, what you're thinking in the comment section, and I will be back with part 3. You guys are amazing. I hope you enjoy your day off for those of you who do have off tomorrow. And I will type and chat with you later. Love you.